Yeah. So, good morning, everyone. I'm absolutely delighted to be with you all today. Yeah, so my day job, in essence, is Chief Security Advisor at Microsoft. So what is one of those? My role, in essence, is to liaise with Microsoft's largest enterprise customers across Europe. So CISOs, CIOs, CTOs, multi-sector, multi-country, really understanding what, in essence, is keeping them up at night. But I'm not here to talk about my day job, but I'm not here to talk about Microsoft. What I am here to talk about is to do a little bit of a shameless plug for my new book, Understand the Cyber Attacker Mindset, and which was released at the beginning of March and has already gone #1 Amazon bestseller in computer security. So I'm going to talk a little bit about one part of that book in particular. But first and foremost, I want to give you a little bit of why I decided to write this book in the first place. What's the motivation behind it. So in essence, a lot of the time in cybersecurity, we talk about the technology. That's really weird. Someone from Microsoft sitting up here now, we're talking about technology. But actually, what we don't necessarily talk about is the humans behind the cyber attacks. What they're doing, why they're doing it, in essence. And so this, in essence, is what my book is all around. It's actually thinking about those attackers, what they do, why they do it, and how do we counteract the human adversary, in essence, in particular. Now, part of the book, I have interviewed ex-criminals, academics, law enforcement. One of those people that I initially interviewed is Tony Sales. So Tony has been given the name by the Daily Mail, that reputable media outlet, of Britain's biggest fraudster. And that was a kind of a title that he had for a very long time. But since then, he's actually set up We Fight Fraud. And Dr. Nicola Hardy, thank you, is actually CEO. And so if you want to talk about We Fight Fraud and their role and what they do, Nicola is a great advocate. But in essence, when I was talking to Tony, a couple of things really stood out for me. These to do with his fraud in person. He said, in essence, you have to have some confidence. Let's be honest, some real balls to do a fraud right in front of somebody, in front of their face. And in essence, what he said to me is, I'm trying to get you to do two things. I'm either trying to get you to love me or hate me. And they're either going to be blinded by love or paralyzed by fear. And that really kind of set me on this track to really kind of understand our deepest emotions, particularly from an attacker's perspective, how they utilize it. And the reason why I've called it the 7 sins of attackers is really emulating the kind of the cardinal sins, if you like, the deadly sins of the Roman Catholic Church. And the kind of theory is, if we go back hundreds of years ago, these are the deepest sins which lead you into temptation and are going to be damned, in essence, if you don't change your ways. So they're the opposite of the deadly sins, the heavenly virtues. And so it's meant to act as a counterbalance, in essence. But actually what I'm going to talk about is the extremes of both of these. Because actually, as an attacker or victim, you actually can feel the same level of emotion, and you can utilize it for positivity or negativity, depending on where you're coming from. So I'm going to really start off initially, this is not working, this is a good start. There we go. So I really want to start with greed. I've had this misconception in particular that most cyber attackers are financially motivated. And I think that is a case to begin with. And this is even what Tony Sales was really talking about. For him and his background and really where he wanted to come to, he was motivated by money and making as much money as possible. And he didn't really care, didn't really think about the victim in particular. It was all about how do I make as much money as possible. And you can really kind of think about, when we think about ransomware operators, business email compromise, a lot of those things is centered on that greed in essence. But the opposite of greed, this is going to cause me a lot of pain today, it's not clicking properly, is, I was going too far. That is. is charity. In essence, it's kind of really thinking about giving as much money away as possible. Now, the problem in extreme level of charity is you just keep giving and giving and giving until you've got nothing left to give. And the kind of attackers also take advantage of this as well, in particular, with regards to the fact that if I know that you're going to keep, no matter what I ask for, no matter what I want you to do, even if you've got nothing left to give, I'm still going to do it because this is how motivated I am in particular. Now, really kind of interesting areas. One of the people in the book that I interviewed is our lead investigator from Microsoft Digital Crimes Unit. And they really talk about the Nigerian prince. Like, how do people fall for these things? It's just so ridiculous. But actually, that's the whole point of the email, is to weed out everyone but the most gullible. And the interesting thing, even when it kind of says, I promise you these multi-billions of dollars, if you just give me your bank account, you just let me do these things, these people actually are not motivated by the money. What they're motivated by is the theory that they're actually helping somebody. So they kind of ignore the money, they just turn to the actual story, the claim behind it, and they really believe that person is genuine. And that's why they're willing to help, and that's why they're willing to start small. But once they hook that person in, they get them for more and more and more. And that, in essence, is kind of one of the key theories behind it. Sorry, this is going to wind me up. So the next thing is gluttony. And the kind of the thing really is, when you kind of think about greed in particular, once I get the taste of the finer things in life, and this is another thing that Tony said as well, I wanted more. I wanted more money. And I want the status that goes with it. And the more status I have, the more power I have. The problem is, when you're kind of so obsessed with that need to have material things, and that need for power, you'll do anything possible to get it in particular. Now, one of the groups I talk about in the book is Fin 7, and I'm not going to talk too much about that because our next speaker is actually going to talk about them in particular. But Fin 7 are regarded as one of the most prolific organised crime gangs in history from a cyber perspective, probably amassed about billions of dollars. So not only do they make money, they invest that money on the stock market as well. And they keep changing their ammo, they keep changing what they're doing. The problem is, when you have so much need, so much greed, and so much gluttony, this is where they start to make mistakes in particular. So the opposite of gluttony is temperance. And this, in essence, is having that level of self-control. And even the kind of the things that you want to whatever degree, I'm really kind of locking myself away. And we take that to the nth degree. It's really stopping your access to every single material thing. And if you kind of think about the dangers of that and how much self-control that you actually have, and if I know how to tweak the button and get you to do something in the right way. And a lot of the people that start with gluttony and end up in temperance, end up with kind of gambling debt. They go from one extreme to the other. And we probably have depression built into that as well. And again, this is how the attackers kind of take advantage of that. Now, the next kind of area is really about pride. This is where we find a lot of the cyber attackers kind of sitting in this area. They want the kudos, they want the notoriety. So one of the groups I speak about in particular, the Lapsus, British teenagers in essence, that cause absolute havoc, absolute mayhem. And one of the cybersecurity researchers even went so far as calling them Rookie of the Year. And so the other person that I interviewed as well is the next member of Anonymous. And they were saying, I am not financially motivated. What I am motivated by is this need for social justice. And I'm willing to go as far as it takes. And I interviewed Laurie Love, and he basically fought the US Justice Department, fought extradition. And one of the things that he talked about in particular is he has this balance between extreme arrogance and extreme humility. I absolutely have the right skill. I can go in, I can deface government departments, I can take them down, I can get access to data, not selling the data, but I will leak that data. I'll do everything I think I need to do in the name of justice for whoever I think I'm sticking up for. The problem we have there is, again, going too far to make that name, keep that name in particular, kind of takes you down a different path. So the opposite of that is humility. It's that ability to kind of hone it in and not feel the need to shout from the highest rooftop, look at me, look what I can do. The challenge with humility, though, in particular, is if you have that social justice, you're kind of so fixated on a specific topic against all other topics, and you'll follow that to the nth degree, and you'll believe people, you want to follow them, and you're really kind of into this group. So we kind of think about anti-vaxxers, we kind of think the level of disinformation, the level of propaganda that we're seeing right now. You kind of see that you have that extreme level of humility, that absolutely need to believe in good. You can kind of see how someone else can take advantage of that. They take you on this path. Once you're on the path, you can't get off the path. And you're more and more absorbed into each of these issues in particular. So the next one is about lust, which is not the same as love. This, in essence, is where you're trying to control somebody at a really deep level in particular. Now, one of the other people I interviewed for my book is Dr. Elizabeth Carter. She's a criminologist and also a forensic linguist. And what she's done, she's actually taken the language, in essence, that's utilised in romance scams. She looks at the WhatsApp messages, the timing of those messages, the emails, the timing of those, and what she basically says, the way they coerce people, the way they get people drawn in essence, is akin to domestic abuse. Because people from the outside say, well, why are you giving that person your money? Why are you allowing that person to do that? It's exactly the same thing from a domestic violence perspective. Why don't you leave that person? Why do you allow them to treat you like that? Do you know a really interesting point? If you knew you were being manipulated, you wouldn't be manipulated. That's kind of the whole point. And they really try and drag you down and drag you in particular. What she also identified was the fact that the attackers don't just act as one, they act as a group. In particular, when we think about some of those romance scammers, they have playbooks and they're operating a shift. So while you're getting a message at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., answer the message, do this, don't that, don't go there, who are you talking to? For them, it's just a change of shift over there. They're just going about their normal day. Problem is, as she identified, they actually pick up the playbook in the wrong place. And sometimes they repeat the exact same message that that person's already received, and then they're like, that's when it clicks onto them in particular, that maybe something isn't quite right. So the opposite of lust is chastity. And this is kind of abstain from everything. Now you can see the danger of this as well. So imagine if you've been scorned, if someone has treated you badly, you're like, that's it. I'm not going to enter any more relationship at all. I do no longer trust women. I no longer trust men. I no longer want a relationship. And again, this can be utilised by attackers as well. But also for that person in particular, because they've had such a negative experience, this could actually lead them down a certain path as well. Maybe they're looking for revenge. Maybe they're looking to see, how do I take this out on somebody else? And so this is an important thing to think about with regards to these kind of emotions and how they can utilise from one side to the other, and how easy it is to counterbalance some of these things. Now, envy in particular is maybe an acute level of jealousy. And it's really very interesting when we think about the fact that how many Westerners are actually victims of some of these attacks in particular. Now, you may have heard about pig butchering, very unfortunate term, which is actually derived from China, which basically infers, in essence, that we are fat, greedy pigs. And in essence, what we're trying to do is fatten us up for slaughter. Because you're so greedy, you are ripe for investment scams in particular. Now, we've probably all seen the things, invest a little bit of money, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, invest a little bit more, by the end of the week, you've doubled or tripled your money. So as far as they're concerned, you deserve this because you're a fat, greedy pig. And so it's an unfortunate term, but this in essence is how they kind of see some of those from the Western world in particular. You've got so much money. I'll have a little bit of that in particular. Thank you very much. And so the opposite of envy is gratitude, which is really being thankful for what you have and the level of what you have in particular. And you kind of might end up just kind of giving a little bit away here and there. And this is kind of very akin to charity in essence, where you're grateful for what you have. I don't need any more. It also means you have a surplus as well. So you don't want that money, you don't need all those material things. I certainly do. So if you're willing to give me some, then I can take advantage of you as well in particular. So you keep giving me and keep calling on you to give me more and more and more of the things you don't want, but I certainly do. And again, you can kind of see how people can get taken advantage of as a result of just the fact that you show this little bit of gratitude, this little bit of, I have enough myself. I'll just give you a little bit of that in return in particular. Now, the next thing is wrath in particular. And this is, you kind of think about have no fury like a woman scorned, for example. But this is taking it to the nth degree, where you actually really hate somebody or hate a group just for the mere fact that they belong to that group. It's got nothing to do with that individual or what they stand for. And so one of the key areas that I look at in particular is nation-state actors and strategic culture. So I actually interviewed somebody who's a wing commander in the military, and one of the things they talked about, again, we see things from our Western lens. So we think about what Russia is doing in Ukraine, or we think about North Korea or some of those other big threat actors. Does it kind of make sense to us what they do and why they do it? But actually, we flip the script. We understand their culture, and we understand their background, and we understand why, in particular, they might just be gunning for the US or various other countries. Kind of makes sense. I think this is something to be very mindful about as well. It's actually when we see it from a different perspective, actually, a lot of what they're doing and why they're doing it and the way that they choose to do it, maybe we don't agree with it, but from their perspective, it really kind of does make sense. So I looked at the strategic culture of Russia and strategic culture of North Korea. Now, have you read The Lazarus House by Jeff White? I actually interviewed him as well. So I wanted to get an insider view of North Korea in particular. Extremely regimented routine. And the interesting thing, what he talks about is cyber slaves, in essence. And it is kind of people that work in the North Korean military don't necessarily have a choice of what they're doing or why they're doing it. And in essence, part of the mentality is actually if you work for the military, if you work for the cyber element of that, you're at the top of the pecking order. The challenge is, actually, a lot of people in North Korea cannot use the internet. So if I'm going to start attacking all these different nations, how am I going to do that? So they actually get sent to China. Where they learn the internet in the free world, so to speak. So now you kind of think about, if you're getting sent to China, and it's that bad in your country, why don't you just leave? Why don't you just defect? And so the North Korean government kind of wise to this, because in essence, I'm keeping your family as a hostage, just to make sure that you do come back. But if you do come back, you're going to get a very good pat on the back for being a very good military citizen. So for the most part, they actually do. They actually do exactly what they're told, when they're told, and when they come back as well. So the kind of the opposite of that, if you like, is patience. So you kind of think about the fact that you're so laid back, nothing ever kind of comes near me. I don't need to worry about anything. I'm kind of cool. I have this right demeanour behind me. Apart from when something that actually is a crisis, and I actually need you to do something. You're kind of just sat there going, no, this doesn't worry me. I don't need to think about these things. And you kind of see you get more and more laid back, in essence. And this is kind of takes me to sloth. And people kind of think sloth is lazy. And kind of going back to the kind of the original kind of 7 sins, the cardinal sins from the Catholic days, it kind of did infer a little bit about that. But actually what it really means in the modern era is that such a level of apathy, I don't care anymore. So you think about the inside threat in particular, you kind of think about how many of those people are kind of being downtrodden. I'm worried about my job. I've got all of these other things going on in my life. Company doesn't care about me, so why do I care about you? And so this kind of inside threat is growing in essence, but the sloth actually means the apathy. And kind of the opposite of that in particular is diligence, where I kind of go to the nth degree, where I'm so super focused on everything, what I'm doing, and I follow the process, I do it to the letter. But you keep doing this time and time and time again, to the point where you can't just take it anymore. This is when you get to the point where I've told you so many times this process doesn't work. I'm trying to follow the right path, but you're not listening to me, you're not doing all the things, and this is where you kind of get the whistleblower. And this is where you get the super malicious user in particular, because that person absolutely understands all your processes. They might even work in IT, they might even work in security. Now, one of the other stories I talk about in the book is Jack Teixeira, if you're aware of him, disgraced US airman, who basically took to Discord and various other social media, 21 years old, had full unfettered access to the deepest levels of US military intelligence. It's not just looking at what's going on in Ukraine, what's going on in China, what's going to do all these things. He not only wanted complete apathy, but he was also a cyber expert. He was also an IT technician. He was able to utilize, in essence, he wanted kudos, he wanted all of these things almost combined, apart from the financial element, to basically show off in front of his friends. Look what I got, look what I can do, in essence. So something we have to be very mindful of in particular. It's kind of where do we go from this? It's really about understanding the extreme levels of those emotions and being cognizant of how those emotions in particular can lead to a change in behaviour. And so I really wanted to kind of really think about whether you're an attacker or a victim. We're kind of in this yin and yang, if you like. So any one of us, at any point of time, can feel some of these emotions. You're going through a stressful time. You get married, you get divorced, you have children, whatever the case. Stuff's going on in your life at different points can make you vulnerable, irrespective of who you are. What you choose to do next is up to you. Whether you choose it as something positive or something negative. And then how do you actually show those emotions to the world in particular. I have to keep going back here, sorry, to click my slide. Now the problem that we also find in cybersecurity, when something goes wrong, we look to someone to blame. Convenient scapegoats, in essence. And this tends to be someone who can't defend themselves very well. So the scapegoat is never anyone in power, never anyone with a lot of money, and never anyone in leadership. And there's a real reason for that, because the scapegoat, in essence, it becomes the sacrificial lamb. And this is the kind of thing that, well, we've kind of dealt with the issue, we've dealt with the reason behind we had the cyber attack. Yes, that person that clicked on the link, it was the intern, we'll blame the CISO, we'll blame everyone else, apart from looking at ourselves and what we did wrong, or what the attacker did right. The problem with the scapegoat actually didn't change anything. So yes, we kind of blame this person, we discipline them, we sack them, maybe we even try to convict them of a crime or something like that. Did it actually make any difference whatsoever to the organisation? No. So actually we have to be very careful of scapegoating, victim blaming, and various different things where we kind of push it onto the other person in particular. The kind of the other thing is then really thinking, oh gosh, I went way too quick then. This thing is not my friend. I'll just go. So this is really about the case, in essence, for human-centric security. It's about turning people first. As much as we talk about the technology, as much as we talk about the process, it's really about the people. Because we really have to have a good hard look at ourselves and why we do something. We're not doing it for people. What, in essence, is the point of this? And so we need to kind of think about the most critical and the most vulnerable people in our organisation is people. And as we sort of said, from the attacker's perspective, as the technology gets better and better at identifying anomalies, blocking threats, kind of doing all of these things, from the attacker's perspective, I'll just try a different method. Doesn't care, doesn't bother me. This malware, phishing, ransomware, whatever exploit it is, as long as I can meet my objective, I don't care. And so actually, I'm going to go to the people, I'm going to socially manipulate them, I'm going to utilise them in particular. And that, in essence, is where we really need to put our effort in particular. I'm going to think the challenge I really get people to think about is really how well do you know your business? How well do you know your people? Good indicator is how many shadow processes there are. Now, if you think about shadow IT, the fact that people can just willy-nilly download stuff off the internet and don't care about processes, I don't care about sanctions, technology. I have a need to do something and I'm going to do it. That, in essence, is what we're saying to people. And so the shadow process is the fact that most people are just trying to do their job, they're just trying to do it the best way they know how. But if I can find a workaround, then so can attacker, in essence. And that's the kind of the point that we need to think about. They're looking for the point of least resistance. And again, if I'm a super malicious user, I know exactly what the process is. And I know exactly how to get around it. I know how you're monitoring. I know how you're not monitoring, to the point in particular. So we need to have a very, very good hard look at ourselves in particular. And how do we counteract the adversary, the human behind it? Well, the reality is you might never know who. You might never know why. But what you can do is really kind of think about those different types of attackers and why they might be motivated. So it doesn't matter, an opportunist, activist, organised crime, nation-state actor, an insider, a lone wolf. They're all motivated in some way. But if I can get access to that data, dependent on who I am, what can I do with it? And so actually, if I think about all of those different things combined, and I kind of think about it, what if someone could get access? What could they do with it? What's the so what? Inadvertently, we then start prioritising what it is we need to do and how we're going to do it. I kind of really, really thinking about that kind of process in particular. And the other thing we have to kind of be really cognizant about as well is the people on the board. So kind of, again, we have this impression that the most senior person knows everything. They're going to make the decision. They're going to make it right. Funny thing, they're human too. They feel exactly the same emotions. Attackers know this. So when we're in the middle of a ransomware case, they want it to be as public as possible. They want it to put as much pressure on it as possible. They might even give you a time window. So if you don't answer me, don't do this, don't do that, in 30 minutes, I'm going to start leaking data. I'm going to start doing various different things. And the problem is, those people have not experienced a cyber attack. They've not experienced a major crisis. They are panicking. They feel the emotions. They feel the stress of all of these things combined in particular. So what we need to be able to do is help them visualise the worst case scenario. I'll give you a hint. I've never ever seen anybody go anywhere near their worst case scenario. Normally we do exercises. It's very nice. Half a day, cup of tea, ransomware attack. Yeah, I've got backups. Backups will be cool. Backup tomorrow morning. That is not the case at all whatsoever. So those people have never actually experienced the deep level of emotion that's going to hit them and hit them hard. So this is where we really need to go to that level in particular. As a kind of a military term, if I train like you fight, to fight like you train. And that in essence is really understanding the most difficult decisions you're going to have to make and the emotion that sits behind those decisions, how you're going to make decisions, and do we have enough information to make effective decisions? And then when you've kind of gone through all of those things, stop guessing yourself. Because if you've actually got the confidence, you've got all those things in place, and you can actually do what's needed in particular. So part of this is that transformational leading. You can't just will it to be so. I want a better culture. We're going to do the right thing by our people. I won't just assume it's going to happen. No, we need to get it down in essence and really kind of think about leading with empathy and really have that kind of level of psychological safety that comes with I made a mistake. I really stop. Whatever the case may be, I'm really scared, I'm really worried about the consequences. So then you have to kind of think about how are you helping them to overcome some of those emotions in particular. And kind of where I just really wanted to end it, really, is a kind of that reality. Ultimately, we are all humans, whether you're a attacker or a victim, but we are all accountable for our own feelings, and our own emotions, and how that manifests into it. So can we make that a positive experience, or is it a negative experience? And ultimately, people will make mistakes. And just because people do bad things doesn't mean they're fundamentally bad, and they can change. And that's one of the things I wanted to reflect on in particular. Now, I hope you found that interesting, apart from this thing not really working properly. Who am I going to blame? Who's the scapegoat? Only joking. So, if you'd like a copy of my book, I am doing some book signings in the Interactive Village, which is kind of just through the opposite side of the auditorium area, whatever you call it out there. So thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day. And I'll come back.